Welcome back, my friends, to this sweet spot where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, Howard Holden and Paul Lewis.
Hello, hello.
Wait. I don't see no remote controls. I don't see the
No.
safe.
Yeah.
Did you
My
switch rooms?
background is a little different. I'm at a hotel in London that is actually quite nice. It's like a one bedroom flat. It's quite spacious and
I was
set
going
up
to say it's much bigger than usual London rooms.
very. It's I don't know, 800 square feet maybe.
Wow. Now that's a room.
It's really good size. I've got a seating area over here with a TV. There's the bedroom. I'm sitting at a dining room table next to a full kitchen. It's
Jeez.
quite lovely.
Is it a Marriott property?
It is a Marriott. Of course, it's a Marriott property. If I get to choose, it's always a Marriott property, and I get to choose, so it's a Marriott property.
Are you on the circle? Like, where are you in the city, the relative area?
I have no idea where I am relative area.
I see.
Did you brought your tasting carrying thing that
I
you
did
bring
not.
to the
I
conferences?
did not. I did not. That's a little much to try to bring to a foreign nation.
Foreign nation. Are you bringing any back? That's the question.
I will absolutely find some time to do some shopping, and we'll see if the shopping is fruitful and what I bring back.
Nice.
But I did. I felt like a real Englishman. I had chips and Guinness for lunch.
Real Englishman. And what did you have for breakfast? Beans?
No,
Beans and
today I had
toast?
pancakes. The last 2 days I had a full English for breakfast.
Oh, fancy.
Right, so bacon and sausage and beans, tomatoes, mushroom, black pudding, and eggs.
Wow. It's been a while since you've crossed the ocean. How was travel? Better?
Fine. It was the
Yeah.
same as it kind of always was, right?
Right.
I mean, I highly recommend anyone that does that do it first class.
Right.
Business is better. Like having a laydown makes international travel really worth it.
100%.
And then of course I went to the arrivals lounge as soon as I got in, which you
Yep.
only get with business or better, right?
Yeah,
And
big
so
fan.
being able to take a shower and have your clothes pressed and relax for a little bit, especially when you're doing an overnight, right? So I landed
Yep.
at 6 in the morning.
Yeah, so you have some time. Right.
Yeah, I mean the check-in's not till 3.
Right.
So I rolled to the hotel and I said, I'm here to check in, and they said, that's good for you. They were very nice about it, but the subtext
That's
was,
interesting,
that's good.
sir. What
Yes,
will you be
really-
doing for the next 4 hours?
Which I said, yes, of course it's not. I'll go have some breakfast. And it's funny, I came down and I sat in a chair in the lobby and almost immediately fell asleep. Like 5 minutes and I was out. And they almost immediately woke me up, which I assumed was them saying, sir, you can't snore in our lobby.
Right.
Which was not that. It was, sir, your room is ready. So
Oh,
my room
nice.
was ready before 11 in the morning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's very nice.
They just gave you the whatever open suite was available.
Apparently, it's fantastic.
Maybe that's the upgrade approach. You have to immediately go into their lobby, undo all your bags, start snoring, and they say, well,
Right.
we can't have this.
Right. We can't kick a status member out. So what do we do instead?
So is
He
that a
looks like a homeless
strategy?
gypsy.
That's a new
It is
strategy?
definitely a strategy. It's definitely a strategy. It is now.
It is now. We will be
It was
using
a
it from
bug.
this point forward.
It was a bug before. It is now a feature.
Now you have to pre-warn them. Okay, but you realize what's going to happen. I'm going to set up encampment right there.
Right. I'll be
You're not gonna be
snoring in
texting-
7.5 minutes. I'm just warning you.
And very loud conference calls. I'm just telling you now.
Loud conference call. That's a good one.
Your choice is to let that happen or find me a room.
So I think that it's interesting that you mentioned that because that sounds like a negotiation.
Mm.
You actually probably went in and you're, hey, I'm here early. Can you get me in? I don't know you, but if I get somewhere early, I want a room. I don't care if it's big or small. I'm not going to spend that much time. I want to be able to crash if it's an international flight Like when we went to Israel, we literally arrived in the morning, and like you said, the room was until the afternoon, and we were like dying to sleep.
Right.
But on our roles, how much of what you guys as leaders, as CAO, CTO, is actually negotiating what's going to happen versus actually doing work? And when I'm saying work, I'm going to put it like we are technologists, and some people think that when you go up, you still need to be banging the keyboard. So, how
Mm.
much is the work versus actually leading or negotiating to be effective?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying, if your team is more than 5 people and you're the CIO, you shouldn't be banging the keyboard doing work.
Mm.
You simply shouldn't. If it's more than 50 people, you absolutely unequivocally shouldn't,
Mm.
right? If your team is more than 50 people and you still feel like you need to bang the keyboard, you don't trust your people enough, right?
Does that mean
And
that
you probably need
you
to
don't
spend
stay
some time
technical?
analyzing. Say what?
Does that mean that you then don't stay technical, understanding the technology as a hobbyist, or is it at work?
Well, that's a personal choice, right? I still spend a lot of time with technology. I just don't spend a lot of time with technology at work, right?
Yeah.
I still work to keep my skills as relevant as I can keep my skills, right? Um, that has advantages for me, but that's because that's how my mind works, and how I'm built. I don't know that I would say that that's necessary for C-level executives at all. Um, does a COO need to know how to run the production line of the factory? I'm not sure that that would make any logical sense. Right?
Mhm.
At the same time, I can point to many an occurrence where having the technical skills helped in the role of being a CIO or CTO. But again, I'm not sure that it matters how good your hard skills are.
Well, I'll tell you where this came up as we were sort of pre-gaming this conversation. I was having a debate with a, pretty high-level technologist, but in fairness, they were an individual contributor, and they were concerned over the sort of return to office sort of mandate push. There was a pre-COVID, everybody comes to the office because we spent a lot of money, and then during COVID, where we think it's more productive if you're working at home, and then post-COVID, we think you should come back, right? Work from home versus return to office. And the pain point for this particular technologist was, I think there's a pretty big difference between the concept of what percentage of my job is actually doing work, right? Hands on keyboard. And the definition of work effectively is not important at that point. It's whatever work means to you. It might be development, it might be configuring servers, it might be project management, it might be creative work like, building a PowerPoint presentation. But how much of your job is doing that work versus negotiating what work has to be done, either for you or for your team? And the distinction really is in between leadership and individual contributor. The assumption was and is, or at least my point of view, was that if you're an individual contributor, the percentage of your job of doing work is higher than if you're a leader. If you're a leader, the percentage of your job of negotiating work is higher. Therefore, if you're mostly an individual contributor and you're productive and working at home, then that makes sense. And there isn't a lot of practical reason why you should be pushed to return to the office. And if you're a leader, there is practical value in coming to the office and seeing people and negotiating and interacting, because a good portion of your time isn't doing work. And how that translates to the CIO and CTO is exactly as Howard's saying, that a good portion of your time needs to not only be negotiating with your leaders, but your peers and your senior executives, right? Negotiating on what work should be done for the year, i.e. your executives, negotiating what work should be done and how with your peers, and then negotiating the waypoints and the quality and the purpose and value with the people who work for you. That's kind of the negotiation. And the actual doing work part of a CIO and CTO, i.e. building a slide, is a rare circumstance versus the majority of your job. That was kind of the philosophy. Does that resonate to either of you?
Yeah, but isn't it at some point, doesn't the logic kind of break itself?
Which point?
Right. At some point, I have to negotiate what work gets done with individual contributors, plural.
Mhm.
And if that negotiation is why I'm in the office, then what you're saying is that negotiation is best done from within an office. In which case, doesn't everyone work from an office then?
Yeah, I think my perspective was more the push to RTO feels more valid to me if you're a leader than you're an individual contributor. But if you have a whole bunch of individual contributors and you're saying thou shalt be in the office to do your individual do work, that seems like a strange push. But I agree with you that effectively what you're saying is since your negotiation is with the individual contributors, then they kind of have to be there too. Maybe.
That assumes that I agree with your premise. I
Right.
don't agree with the premise that you need to be in the office to do that.
Hmm.
I would totally agree that people whose job it is to do that negotiation frequently, which is all of leadership,
Right.
should meet several times a year when it is most critical to do those things in person.
Mm.
Right. I don't think that means you need to maintain an office. Like I can rent a conference space somewhere. We can all go stay at the same hotel or go stay at a lodge somewhere, and it'd be cheaper than renting an office.
Right.
My concern with renting an office isn't are we more effective in the office? That's not it. It's especially for people that do what we do. It's almost universally true that knowledge workers are better in an office because they get to work with other knowledge workers that are a hand's breadth away.
Right.
However, there's two big disadvantages to RTO. We've said both of them 1,000 times. The first is if your best employees don't want RTO, then you're giving yourself a haircut for no real value.
Right.
Right, because they'll go work somewhere else. They're your best employees. They're the ones that are the easiest to find. That will find it easiest to find alternate employment.
Right.
Then the second reason, okay, if you disagree with the first one, the second reason you really can't disagree with because it's not up for debate, and that is, if I'm hiring for an office, I'm hiring within 50 minutes of an office. If I'm hiring with no office, I'm hiring within 4 time zones of the office.
Right.
And you could even argue more, right? I don't find it particularly difficult to have a decent portion of my team in England when I'm in Mountain Standard Time.
Right.
I don't find that to be something that I'm forced to work around. Again, when we're doing strategic planning, do I think it's better that we're all in the same room with a whiteboard? Absolutely. Right? Do I think that's worth consuming office space for? I mean, no, not really.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my personal philosophy to return to office. I'm just debating the validity depending on the type of employee you are, right? I think it's more valid for leadership ranks and less valid for individual contributors. That doesn't necessarily mean I think it's valid in general. I just think it's a spectrum of validity. but I agree like you. We've spent enough time doing strategic planning in person that I believe it's better. So I have a quarterly offsite with my leadership team in a city, not in an office, because none of the offices we have are convenient for the people that work for me. Right. So
Sure.
we find a city, we spend $40 a day on whatever the local room is, right? And we create value not just in the meeting room to determine what that next quarter looks like, but we create value at lunch and at dinner and at drinks and
For
bring
sure.
others who happen to be in that city together. It's all of that value as one combined entity.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Right. And I think it's just as ridiculous to say there's no value that gets created in the office as to say that the only value gets created in the office.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're saying either of those things, but I do in fact hear both of those things from different sides of the aisle on this issue. right? The frustrating part for me is I have yet to hear a staunch RTO advocate advocating for the reasons that we've laid out.
Hmm.
Right. Most of what I hear is we're paying all this money for office space and it is empty. Get your asses back to the office.
Right. We're wasting electricity.
Right. Or we are bad leaders and don't know how to lead people that we can't see and touch every day. So get your ass back to the office.
Right. Yeah. We're doubting productivity because we don't see you.
Correct. Both of those are awful, horrible things. And I hope that if your organization does that and you're good, you go find someplace else to work.
Right.
Right. I mean, I hate to say it, but Broadcom is going down the exact path I expected Broadcom to go down. I don't know if you saw the announcement. The announcement was get your ass back to the office.
Right.
Right. That was a really weird announcement because there was another one. ERGs, employee resource groups, were also an alien thing for Broadcom. And specifically the CEO of Broadcom, who said, I don't know if I'm going to support them. Good luck.
Interesting.
Right. He said, they're alien to me. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know if I'm going to support them. Good luck. And that's a broken culture right there. Right. I mean, if you've got a CEO that's like, well, if I don't understand something, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. Not if I don't understand something, I'm going to endeavor to understand it. Then you're broken as an organization.
Do you find that there is a physical world culture and a digital world culture? So if you're in the business of being in the physical world, you have a bunch of manufacturing plants and you sell product, that you have a certain cultural and mental state and framing of how people should work versus a company that only creates and sells digital content and value.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I just don't agree with it. Like, I don't agree that that's a decent excuse.
I see.
Yesterday, you viewed the world as one thing. If you were in manufacturing, you viewed the world as a physical space, and thus everybody needed to be in that physical space.
Right.
That's not the world that we're in, though.
Right.
That was your cognitive dissonance denying the reality of the world that you were in for as long as you could. Right. So now people that are grasping onto that are doing so as though it is some lifeline. Right. A lifeboat in a sea that they're uncomfortable with, just going neener, neener. I don't have to be comfortable with it because I'm the boss. And it's like, dude, that is, it's yet again another case of people who want to lead are the exact people that shouldn't be leaders.
And there's not a lot of transition between leadership between those two worlds. Like you don't get a 30-year manufacturer of cars now becoming the CEO of HP. It doesn't. There's no transition there either way, and therefore that feels like it's going to have some longevity. It's going to be like that and diverge even more over time.
Well, yeah, but I think it's a generational thing more than anything.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. Like I think the generation that has that lack of flexibility is going to go away, whether that's one generation or two generations.
Right.
Right.
Our generation or the generation ahead of us?
Well, it's the generation ahead of us for sure, but there's also a decent percentage of our generation that is exactly the same. Right. Gen X is not a distinctive generation. Gen X is half millennial and half boomer.
Right.
Right. And you fit one or the other. You either believe the same thing your parents do, or you believe the same thing your parents' generation did, or you believe the same thing that your children's generation does.
Right.
Right. You help usher those ideas in. And you got to pick one or the other. Like you can't, straddling the fence isn't going to help you either.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to the point where organizations are going to realize you need good talent. Right, especially if you're going to realize the value of AI, good talent becomes more important, not less important.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, right.
About the change that AI is bringing, how do you see that affecting of that change? Will that accelerate the change to move those leaders out and the new ones come in?
I mean, yes. Since I can already. There's already work being done to use generative AI as a CEO.
Right.
Like if you're just, I don't know, an intermediate CIO, as in your quality. You're not you're entry level or intermediate. You're not advanced or master.
Right.
You probably could be replaced by an LLM today. Like,
Right.
right? If you're not going to improve, why do I need you? Right? And I see a lot of C-level executives where my response has been for a long time, why do I need you?
Does that make a difference where you are on the do work versus plan for work spectrum? In other words, if you're a CEO that spends more time doing work versus spending more time planning for work, then AI is much more likely to displace you.
I don't think it actually matters. I don't think it matters either way. Right? I mean, an AI today can give you a rough strategy that comes from its learning from how many times all of the big 5 consulting companies have repeated, like all they do is repeat a message, so it knows that message.
Right.
So it can give any company that strategy today, right now, no problem.
You're telling me the same PowerPoint that comes from Accenture has been delivered to multiple companies? Is that what you're trying to tell me right now?
Yes. I realize you're being sarcastic, but just in case any of our viewers aren't aware, yes, that is 100% absolutely what they do.
I concur.
Right. And I know of companies that have received PowerPoint presentations on global corporate strategy from the Big 5, Googled the concepts and found slides where the slides were fundamentally the same, but the company was replaced. Right. That's not how, so the LLM already knows that, and therefore it can deliver the same thing.
That's right.
And if that's really all you're doing, if that's really the totality of your contribution, yeah, I can just replace you with an LLM.
We think you should find more customers in new channels and reduce your expenses and overhead. Agreed. As a general philosophy, you should do that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. All right, we're going to move for a second.
Okay. Oh. Why are we taking this tour of your office, your room?
The housekeeping is at the door, and I need to be able to understand them, and I can't from 80 feet away.
You're walking through a massive hallway in your hotel room. Oh, now we're on mute. There you go. This is what happens when you do it live. See, people think that we record and edit.
This is not only what you get when you do it live, but what you get when you do it live in a hotel. Like, that's my hallway. I'm telling you, it's a big hotel room.
5-minute walk to the desk.
Okay.
So let's get back to CIO CTO. How would you define? I'll ask the question differently. What's the definition of doing work for a CIO CTO versus planning for work for a CIO and CTO? Like, what does work mean if we say do work? And by that I really mean you're not talking to somebody, you're not emailing, you're not on Zoom, you're clicking the keyboard, building something. What is the thing you're building?
Yeah, but then the question that I would have for you is, since most of it, I don't think there's any conflict there, most of it is negotiating the work that's to be done.
Yeah, that I buy.
Okay. The question then is documenting the result of that negotiation work or still part of the negotiation?
I don't know. You tell me. How would you define that as work, or would you define that as negotiation?
No, I would define that as negotiating.
Okay.
Right.
So does a CIO and CTO do any work?
No.
By that definition?
No. No, I think it's all negotiation.
Interesting.
Right. Under that guise. Right. So my thought is, like, if I write an email or create a PowerPoint or create a Visio, which I don't really do anymore,
right,
or an Excel, the focus of that is part of the negotiating the work that is to be done. Or
documented what you've agreed to.
Correct, but that's all part of the negotiating the work that is to be done, right? It's hey, this is what we talked about. I took my thoughts, I put it down on paper so you could better see it. Here, now you should be able to see it. Right. And so I think it's okay, maybe 10% getting work done, right? But I would also say, like, every time in my current role, I'm doing work. I'm not actually doing work as a CTO,
Hmm.
right? I'm doing work as an analyst. I'm doing work as a salesperson. I'm not doing work as a CTO.
Right. But you have
Right?
a unique-ish CTO role. If we're thinking about
I
CTOs,
do.
guys within a cookie company, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Distinctly different
but
than an
I mean,
analyst.
my answer would be the same.
Yeah.
Um, so
Like
at my
you have
last
multiple roles,
role,
I guess, which isn't necessarily the same as most CTOs.
no, but even in my last role, there were multiple times where I did work, but I did work that that was not, it was still, it wasn't part of my CXO role,
Right.
right? It was part of a role that was unfilled at the organization, undefined at the organization, didn't exist, and that I had experience in, and thus I was able to do that.
Hmm.
Right? Like designing a piece of software to do production planning and constraint management is not something that the CTO or CIO should be doing.
Right.
Right? I did that, but that's something that a business analyst should be doing.
Right.
I simply had the experience necessary to do that. I was capable of doing it, and so I did it. Right? So I would
Yeah.
still say I can't think of a time in the last some number of years where I did things that was doing work while wearing the CTO, the CIO hat, or the CTO hat, or the CISO hat. Like, and CISOs are probably the closest of the C-letter executives. CISOs probably do more work. Their percentage is probably 60-40.
Hmm.
Right?
Because
But
that
I've
work
also
is
spent
evaluating incidents, creating policy,
I,
maybe not implementing technology, but everything other than the actual firewall rule.
I mean, they might be red teaming and blue teaming. They might still be doing, implementing technology. They still, the CISOs tend to be pretty technical,
Mhm.
right? And the department tends to be extremely underfunded, right? And so even
Right.
if the CISO is only a partial head, they tend to have come up through the ranks, right? And
Right.
thus are likely executing. They're likely executing on the job, right? And it may be something where they're executing by building GRC policies and configuring how those things are enforced, and maybe even specking the RFPs
Right.
and doing the initial conversations with
Yeah.
vendors, right?
Sitting in the audits, answering
Right,
customer questions about the security maturity posture of the organization.
right.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm doing more work through my hierarchy, then that work would be either the physical racking of a server or or programming a piece of code and or configuring some sort of SaaS software. That's all the doing work part. And you should be doing
Sure.
less of that as a CIO and CTO.
None. You should be doing
Yeah.
none, right?
And I
And
agree with you that
really, anytime you're taking the CIO hat off or the CTO hat off, and you're putting on the engineer hat,
yeah,
you should see that as a negative, not a positive.
the size of organization make a difference. Like what if you're a startup and there's 3 people and you're
Like I said, right? If your team is less than 5, this doesn't apply.
right, then you
Right?
have
Maybe
to.
if your team is less than 50, this doesn't apply. But if your team is greater than 50, this absolutely applies.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, because when your team is 5, when you're in a startup, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've heard me say many times, if I have a team of 50, I better only have work for 49 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm not one of those people. I can't be. I don't have time to do the work that the team needs to
Right.
put together. And if you're saying the planning for work, i.e. the calls, the emails, the meetings, and the documentation of work, i.e. the status updates and or the project plans, is all part of the negotiation, then you're right. The only real work I would do at that point is content creation. Right. So something like this, what we're doing right now,
Right.
isn't work necessarily, and isn't planning for work, but it is content that gets created. Right. It might be
Correct.
a blog, it might be a video, it might be whatever content that might make sense to deploy.
Well, and if you think about it that way, then we go right back to that whole branding conversation that we've had in the past,
Right.
right? And you both do work to build your brand and do work to build you as part of the corporate brand, right? Both of which are valuable today,
Right.
right? Disney would get value from the CIO of Disney being well known,
Right.
and does, right? Same for Coca-Cola, same for anybody.
I could argue, and have argued several times, that whatever content I create or the work I do in order to improve my personal brand is for the benefit of the company that I'm working for at the moment. Also,
To some percentage.
Yeah. What percentage wouldn't? If I have a political opinion that the company doesn't
No,
particularly
no. But everything has a percentage. Like nothing's 100%.
Sure.
Right. Everything that's public has some percentage of value for you as the individual and some percentage of value for the company. So
Right.
There's very,
It's something greater than zero at the very least.
Yeah.
Is the reverse true? So if content you're producing for the company isn't 100% valuable to the company, always
No, it's still some percent valuable to your brand.
Right. Of course.
It's part your brand, it's part company brand. It's it
Right.
always that's why I can't understand executives that have no external presence.
Right.
I just don't get it. Like you're not managing your brand, you're not helping the company manage their brand. What are you doing?
Right.
Right. I get you're doing other things. It doesn't mean that that's the only thing that has value, but it has so much value to you as an individual that you should be doing it to some percentage. I don't know what that right percentage is, right? But and it varies from company to company. But you should be doing it some percentage, right? And that's about as close as it gets, I think, to doing work for a C-level executive.
Right.
Right.
So now that you said
CEO
that,
might be a little different, especially if you're doing fundraising. Right? See, the CEO is so much a salesman, a hustler, that you can easily argue there's a lot of that is doing work.
Right.
so thinking about that, if you look at the technologist, they think that the banging on the keyboard is work. How do you manage the expectations that as a leader, like you described, now you're still their technology, a vertical leader, but then their expectation of work, it was the value that you bring about the technologist versus now that you're doing something different. How do you manage those expectations and help them understand the difference?
The only way that your role makes sense is you can do something that no one else in the company can do, and that something is necessary. Right? So if you're doing engineering work as a CTO or a CIO, then you're making a huge mistake because you've hired other people to do that so you can focus on being a CIO and CTO.
Yeah.
Right. And so unless the job of a CIO or CTO at your organization is completely done and there is no more work that you could do, you should not be acting as an engineer for any percentage of time.
There's 8 billion people on Earth. The likelihood you have a unique skill set is zero.
It's low. Right. But additionally, the likelihood that your organization needs that particular set of skills is also very low.
Right.
Right. And do they need that particular skill at that particular time? There's no one else that can set up that piece of hardware, that can run that piece of software, that can configure that application.
Right.
And we all know once you do that, you own it forever.
Right.
So that's really the position you want to put yourself in as a CIO or CTO. You want to be the owner of that thing. That's a reasonable use of your time as that executive. Like that's a decision that you should make at your level of authority. That seems like you don't understand what the role of a CIO or CTO is if that's what you're doing. And I see a lot of it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's actually an angle we should explore in the next 3 minutes that we have. The do work, plan for work spectrum as it changes while you get promoted over time, right? So you're an individual contributor, you become a manager, a director, a VP, a CIO, CTO. How do you know as that person where I should what dial I should change in that spectrum as I go up? Like who's helping me figure that out? It's one of the harder things to as you're going through the ranks, isn't it?
It kind of is, right? But it's also how many people that directly report to you are doers and how many people that directly report to you are leaders.
Right.
Right? If there's 1 degree of separation or 0 degrees of separation, as in you're a line leader, right? You're a manager,
Right.
then you probably need to be spending a bunch of time on the keyboard.
Right.
Right? You're taking escalations, you're managing more complex things, but you're doing it ideally in a way where a very large percentage of that activity is mentoring.
Yeah. You're a
If
player
I'm on
coach.
the keyboard, I'm doing knowledge transfer to the person who should actually be doing it to a large percentage. That's not always going to be true as a manager, right? You may find that is 60-40 with 60% you're still doing work. It'd be
Right.
fine. Right? I've been in those organizations and that's fine. Director, now you have a degree of separation, right? Or senior manager, you may have a degree of separation where the people who report to you are all managers.
Right.
Director, you might have 2, right? Only senior managers report to you, and then managers, and then individual contributors, right? And the further you get away, the more degrees of separation. And so it should almost be like an exponential reduction. If it's 60-40, right, then it's probably 40-60, then it's probably 20-80, then it's probably 10-5-0, something like that.
These are big dial changes, not small dial changes.
Correct. They're big dial changes, right? If you're a VP and you're still sitting at the keyboard doing work, you're neither mentoring nor managing your people, much less leading them.
You're not a VP at that point, in title alone.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And let's also keep in mind, I don't give out orders. Right. I may say, hey, this is the decision on strategy. If I have to give out an order, it's a bad day for me. I'm upset. That means my leaders, the people that report to me, have failed.
Right.
They should not need orders.
Right.
Right.
They should know how to implement a decision.
Yeah. Correct. They should need decisions. These are the decisions that have been made. This is the strategy we're going with. Right. This is what that strategy means. This is how I think that should kind of play out. Not how it should be executed, but kind of what the net result is at the end of executing that strategy, right? This is the reason why we did that. The reason why this strategy decision was made was because of this. Like I'm good with all of that. I'm really not good with, no, you will do this way. I don't like that. That's
right.
That's not a good use of a executive, right? And it, I see it a ton.
And I think technology leadership makes this work for us, makes this worse for ourselves. We have a habit in technology, of promoting individuals into higher ranks before the organization chart makes sense to do that. And we do that because of longevity in the career, right? So we'll take somebody who's been a manager for 10 years, has the exact same organization, and give them a director title. But their organization doesn't change because they have the tenure to support it.
Yeah.
But now we've titled them director. We kind of have an expectation that they do things differently, yet they have the exact same team with the exact same job, delivering the exact same value. And we do this all the time. Sometimes we'll make them a VP. We'll make them, we start promoting the individual by not changing their team and having different expectations, and they don't know what to do. I see that happen time and time again.
I do. I don't think it's as much a problem when it's small organizations, but at large organizations, it's a huge problem. Right.
But it's hard to change our expectation of that individual while they still have the same output mandate. Right? They still have the same 10 people delivering the same product they always have been doing.
Yeah. Well, especially if you do add demands, right? Okay, we're going to promote you to director. However, we then need you to be a director. We need you to do more strategic planning. Okay, cool. Do I get to backfill the line level work, the IC level work that I was doing? No. Oh, so this is just a demotion then.
Right. It feels
We
like
don't think
those.
about
It's
it that
more
way.
work,
What we
same
think
pay.
about is that will help me get a director level role at my next company,
Right.
right? And that's I think where one of the places where leaders make mistakes, right? The leaders above them that are making those decisions. Oh, this will help me retain that person. No, it'll help you retain them just long enough for them to go work somewhere that knows what a director is,
Right.
right? Like you're greasing the skids for their next employer is all you're doing. You're not helping yourself, your company, or them
Kind of
at the
two bad
company.
answers then, right? So let's say you do have an employee, been around 10, 15 years. They're not ready. There's no other place to put them in your organization. Um, so either they're leaving because they're not satisfied, they're not getting promoted, or they're leaving because we promoted them but have the same job. Where's the win?
Well, there is no win because
There's no
fundamentally,
win. Yeah.
well, fundamentally, you're
That,
doing it wrong either way, right?
that person
In
has
both
outgrown this
cases, what you have
organization.
failed to do is you have failed to work with them on career planning,
Right.
right? And if you promote them without backfilling their prior role, you've also told everybody that works for them there's nowhere for you to go,
Right.
right? The king must die because there will never be space underneath them,
Right.
right? And so the thing that you're trying to do, you have undone by doing that.
Right.
Right. Again, right? We're in this case we're talking companies larger than a couple hundred, right? Where you actually do
Right.
have levels of separation.
Right. Yeah. Large enough to have levels, but not so large that you can move people around in peer-like roles. I couldn't
Right.
take that leader and make them in charge of some other technology discipline because we have expectations that that leader have an understanding of that discipline.
Sure. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure how well I think that actually works. Like that's been a big thing.
Of
And I'm
moving
not
someone to another discipline. Yeah.
yeah, right. I guess at like the VP level it probably works because again, we're back to the doing. The doing is very little. But then
Right.
how do you really do effective strategy against work that you don't have a really good understanding and expertise of what the work is.
Right.
Like it's just harder.
Sure.
It's not impossible. It just takes you longer to get up to speed. So, you know, I don't know how many organizations kind of set proper expectations for that.
Yeah. It's also a types of work thing. So you assume when you're a VP, you might have 3 or 4 different disciplines under you. You can't have
Sure.
there shouldn't be an expectation that you know 4 different disciplines. Yeah.
No, but you probably know one of them really well,
Right.
and then the other 3 were your peers, and so you probably
Yeah.
know a second one pretty well, and then the
Yeah.
other 2 decently well.
Right.
Right? But there are organizations that do like lateral moves, right?
Right.
They'll pick you up and move you to something you have no experience in, and it's
Like
like,
the
well, I
VP
mean,
of PMO out and put him as the VP of infrastructure. It's clearly
correct,
not. Yeah.
correct, right? And no, while I understand what you're trying to do as an organization, you're creating an awful lot. You're force creating an awful lot of generalists. I don't know that
Right.
that's ever been successful,
Right.
right?
All right, Carlos. What do you think about doing work versus playing for work?
It definitely is a distinction, uh, that when you say that there's different roles, I've seen roles like you said with the title of VP, but they're asking you for you need to have 10 years of Java development experience and you should know all. I'm like, wait, are you leading or are you coding? Which one are you doing? And that's actually, like you mentioned, it's a challenge that our industry has, and that's why sometimes there's so much trouble and the projects doesn't get delivered on time because you're not leading them correctly, and then the people that need to code don't know what the heck to do. Because I'm like, okay, so if you're doing it, then I'm not doing it, then I'm just watching you. So that was a really good one to take some notes, go back, highlight the transcription. So my friends, it's awesome to have you here. And as Paul and Howard mentioned, take the time to understand, are you still banging the keyboard on your role and you have gone up from just being a technologist? Now you should start saying, hey, probably I need to delegate a little bit more so I can focus on the next level so I can grow. If you're still on the bottom and you're growing and you're a technologist, say, okay, that's where I want to go. How you should be mapping out your career, that is not about doing less work, is different, it's shifting what you're doing. Now you're more strategic versus the technology. So, my friends, we'll see you on our next episode.